Make that bigger, right, Willie? And so, did we make it? Yeah, see it? I told you you'd make it bigger. How's that? So, I want to welcome all of you here, Saturday Night Live. This is Life Recovery. And Life Recovery, even though we hit pretty heavily on substances, drugs, alcohol, but other behaviors, but the reason why we call it life recovery, because life is messy, and substances and behaviors, well, that covers a pretty big swath when you stop and think about it, right? And but it's not just drugs, illegal drugs. There's legal drugs that people have problems with, and probably there may be as much with legal as illegal. Alcohol, you name it, that there are multiple aspects of addiction. And so anyway, this is Saturday Night Live, Life Recovery. I want to welcome all of you and welcome you out in internet land. And tonight we're going to be talking about, again, this is the last week we'll be covering until a year from now, until next January, step one. And step one is we admit that we were powerless over our problems, that our lives have become unmanageable. That's step one, recognizing and accepting. Well, recognizing. We're not even ready to accept it yet, really. We see that life is unmanageable, but we first got to recognize it. Because if you don't recognize it, how can you fix something you want that you're unwilling to recognize? How many times have you heard somebody else, not you guys, I'm sure, that I don't have a problem. It's those other folks, those other people. It's that person, right? Too much. Okay. So we're doing step one, and our topic for tonight, out of our life recovery, this is our workbook. It's Life Recovery Workbook. And we have the Life Recovery Bible, which ties the scriptures to the 12 steps. And because we're a faith-based place here, you don't have to be interested in the faith aspect of it as we see it. We're just interested in helping you if you're interested in recovery. We figure the rest of it will get worked out. How about that? That's the way we want to do it. And everybody's welcome here, even if you're high or drunk, as long as you don't interrupt the meeting where other people can't be able to participate in the meeting. If you become an extreme disturbance, then that's, you've crossed the line. But we welcome everybody, no matter what. So we're going to be talking about a time to choose. And this is really, there's just not any profile in the step guide and the Life Recovery Bible that's just not good. It just hits some really good topics to make you think through some things. We go through life and really because of our addictive behaviors, we choose to escape instead of processing and thinking through. Would you agree with that statement? Hello? Avoid, deny, and lie, right? Is that too much? All right. And so, anyway, tonight we're going to be talking about a time to choose. So, let's talk about my thoughts, questions, and quotes. Hey, do you like my thoughts, questions, and quotes? I was thinking today that I ought to ask you, if you don't want me to continue to do this, I guess I might stop. I threw the might in there just because probably I won't, but I might. Because I figure if they're good thoughts to me, they ought to be good thoughts to you. But
It's better than Facebook.
Better than Facebook. I have this thought from David Baer, and he actually is on Facebook. But this wasn't off of Facebook, but I've seen him on Facebook as a public presenter. And he says that your beliefs create your destiny, right? This is the core of behavioral psychology. Yes. He goes on to say, he says, your beliefs dictate your thoughts. Your beliefs dictate your thoughts, which dictate your emotions, which dictate your actions, which dictate your results, which reinforces your beliefs. Too much? Shall I read that again? I don't have to.
Go ahead and do it again.
Okay. It says your beliefs dictate your thoughts, which dictate your emotions, which dictate your actions, which dictate your results, which reinforces your beliefs. Beliefs are just decisions. He goes on to say this. Beliefs are just decisions that you decide that you can decide to change your decisions and your beliefs. So I remember a day in my life that I thought that I was what I was, and there wasn't anything I could do about it because that's the way I believe, and that's the way I've always believed. So how can I be any different than that? And I found out just because I believe it, and I did believe it, I believed it strongly, didn't mean it was right. It wasn't true. And if it wasn't true, that's what you call a lie. And I found out how many, I'm sure I still believe some lies, but I have weeded out a lot of those lies. How about you? Because if you live your life based on a lie, how's that going to work out for you? And wouldn't it be better for you if you based your life on truth? Would that be in your best interest? Okay. I found this poem this week. I really liked it. Seemed like I'd heard the very first of it before, but I was very unfamiliar, but I really liked it. So I'm going to read this to you. Is that okay? It's from Ralph Waldo Emerson, and it's about what is success. Anybody interested? What is success? He says, to laugh often and much, to win the respect of intelligent people and the affection of children, to earn the appreciation of honest critics, and to endure the betrayal of false friends. You can almost feel the weight of that one, right? To appreciate beauty, to find the best in others. That's a big statement. To find the best in others, because we're kind of wired to look for the worst in others, to try to protect ourselves. And you know the truth is, you always get what you look for. To find the best in others, to leave the world a little bit better, whether by a healthy child, a garden patch, or a redeemed social condition. To know even one life has breathed easier because you have lived this is to have succeeded. Ralph Waldo Emerson. What do you think? I liked it. Maya Angelou said this, and this is small, so I'm going to get it close. Says, I've learned that people will forget what you say. People will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. That is so true. Let's read one more. This is from Jordan Peterson. I've read this one before, but Jordan Peterson says this. He says, there's no way to avoid your problems, but there are proper ways to deal with them.
I really like that.
Do I?
I really like that.
Yeah, that's a good one. All right. Heather, are you ready? Okay. Heather's going to come up and she's going to read us the 12 steps. So welcome, Heather.
Good evening.
Good evening.
You
Step 1, we admitted that we were powerless over our problems and that our lives have become unmanageable. I know that nothing good lives in me. I want to do what is right, but I can't. Step 2, we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. God is working in you, giving you the desire and the power to do what pleases Him. Step 3, we made a decision to turn our wills and our lives over to the care of God. Dear brothers and sisters, I plead with you to give your bodies to God because of all He has done for you. Let them be a living and holy sacrifice, that the kind He will find acceptable. Step 4, we made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. Let us test and examine our ways. Let us turn back to the Lord. Step 5, we admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. Confess your sins to each other and pray for each other so that you may be healed. Step 6, we were entirely ready to have God remove these defects of character. Humble yourselves before the Lord, and He will lift you up in honor. Step 7, we humbly ask God to remove our shortcomings. If we confess our sins to Him, He is faithful and just to forgive us our sins and to cleanse us from all wickedness. Step 8, we made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. Do to others as you would have them do to you. Step 9, we made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. If you are presenting a sacrifice at the altar and someone has sent something against you, leave your sacrifice there at the altar, go and then be reconciled to that person, then come and offer your sacrifice to God. Step 10, we can continue to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. If you think you are standing strong, be careful not to fall. Step 11, we sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry it out. Devote yourself to prayer with an alert mind and thankful heart. Step 12, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we try to carry this message to others and to practice these principles in all of our affairs. Dear brothers and sisters, if another believer is overcome by some sin, you who are godly should gently and humbly help that person back onto the right path. And be careful not to fall into the same temptation yourself. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather.
Thank you, Heather.
Hello, everybody.
How are you guys?
There you go.
This step got me thinking about all the chaos and the confusion and the mayhem and the drug addiction and just everything for all those years. And it's like such a peaceful place to not have to live in, destroying people's lives and my own life. But step one, time to choose. Bible reading, Acts 9, 1-9. We admitted that we were powerless over our problems and that our lives had become unmanageable. There are important moments in life that can change our destiny. These are often times when we are confronted with how powerless we are over the events of our life. These moments can either destroy us or forever set the course of our life in a much better direction. Saul of Tarsus, later called Saul, had such a moment after Jesus' ascension. Saul took it upon himself to rid the world of Christians. As he headed to Damascus on this mission, a light from heaven suddenly shone down around him. He fell to the ground and heard a voice saying to him, Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? I am Jesus, the one you are persecuting. Now get up and go into the city, and you will be told what you must do. Saul picked himself up off the ground, but when he opened his eyes, he was blind. So his companions led him by the hand to Damascus. He remained there blind for 3 days and did not eat or drink. Acts 9, 3-6, 8-9. Saul was suddenly confronted with the fact that his life wasn't as perfect as he thought. Self-righteousness had been his trademark.
Read that sentence again.
Self-righteousness had been his trademark.
Read that sentence again.
Self-righteousness had been his
I
trademark.
just thought we ought to make sure we heard that.
Yeah, self-righteousness. That's a tough one.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
I wonder if we all have a trademark.
I wonder what mine is. Oh. Or was. Just drugs,
Was
chaos.
and it. We both of them was and it.
Yeah. Still, I mean, I go through stuff still today. By letting go of his illusions of power, however, he became one of the most powerful men ever. The Apostle Paul, when we are confronted with the knowledge that our life isn't under our control, we have a choice. We can continue in denial and self-righteousness, or we can face the fact that we have been blind to some important issues. If we become willing to be led into recovery and into a whole new way of life, we will find true power.
Good.
That's true. That really is. I mean, when I was on drugs and stuff, I thought I had power, but that's a different kind. That's self-righteousness, right? Yeah. I'm just glad life is better today, opposed to what it was back then. Those are the questions.
Hey, how about if I ask a question?
All right, you go for it.
What does that statement, that last statement there, we find true power? What does that mean to you, true power?
Well, I'm not going off my own power and then watching everything fall apart. The real power, the power that brings life and restores it,
And
restores me.
nobody's going to disagree with those statements.
Yeah.
It seems abstract.
Oh,
I agree.
okay. Ask me again.
What does it mean to you about this statement here, about we will find true power? What's true power?
God.
Well, help us. Help
Oh,
us
so
connect.
I don't have to wake up in the morning and be feeding where am I gonna get in trouble today, or where am I gonna do drugs today? Like it gives me, like, it helps sustain me through those times, you know? That power, that true power does.
That true power does what for you?
Helps sustain me through those hard times.
Hard times.
Yeah.
How does it do that?
It's like, it gives me peace. It gives me hope. It shines like a light in my darkness, you know?
Peace and shines like a light in the darkness.
Yeah. It's just
And that compares to before it was what?
very dark, very evil. It seems like it chases that away.
But what does that mean, peace?
Peace, I mean, I could be okay with life.
Be okay,
Yeah, I can be mellow.
mellow.
I don't have to act out and be crazy and upset
So-
and mad. And
I'm driving for something in case you
I
couldn't tell.
know. I'm
So,
going with you.
so, thank you for allowing me
Yeah,
to,
you're good.
so,
You're the pilot.
thank you. Yeah, backseat. So, what was, you said this is power, so what was it before compared to what it is now when you say you have this true power?
That was myself. And myself thought I could get it done. I can do this. I don't need nothing else. It's me. It's all me.
Well, but see, you, so what did you have that, versus, you say with this power, you have peace. What did you have when you had whatever this was going on?
Turmoil and confusion. A lot of confusion. Powerlessness.
Good, good, good. What about fear?
Yes, lots of fear. Lots of fear.
What kind of fear?
Fear of the unknown. Fear of like, okay, fear, a type of fear like you don't know what's around the corner, but you automatically assume there's 50,000 evil things around that corner or bad things around that corner. And so I would be,
Which includes maybe police and, or
boogeyman,
people that you owe
yeah.
money to.
Yeah,
or
yes, all
that
that
are out
stuff,
to get you
yes.
because they just want a piece of you.
and that's where that self-righteous power comes from. It's like, oh, I got this. But no, God's power is greater than all that. It's that peace. Right there.
And so compare that with this piece that you're talking about.
Oh, it's way better place to be than caught up in that other place of just self-righteousness and powerlessness, and it's just a lot safer place for me.
What would you say to people that they don't believe in that? They don't believe, they just believe that you're making this up.
So it's faith the size of a mustard seed. I mean, just try it, give it a try. You know, I never believed in it. I didn't for years. Like I came here for years, and I finally just when I started working these steps. Like
What was that? What was that
When
last
I
statement?
finally started working these steps.
Would you say that again?
When I finally started working these steps,
Just check.
like for years, like I would be clean for a long time, and then I wouldn't, and then I would, and until I started working these steps, and that's when I started feeling something change inside of me, and I wouldn't feel so powerless.
And when this changed inside of you, was that any way, shape, or form connected with this piece that you're talking about?
Yes.
Explain that.
Well, my mind's quieter.
Good.
My thoughts are usually pretty much on track, you know. Instead of being like, well, I'm gonna do this minute or that minute and this minute, even though I was clean, I didn't really have peace, you know,
Good.
for the longest time. And now I do, and I have days where it's rough, but you know what? I don't have my addiction to run to. It's still there, but I
So
don't
what
run
do
to
you
it.
do when you do have those days that you're emotionally dysregulated or rough, as you call
Isolate.
them? You want,
I isolate.
but so does that help you or does that harm you?
No, and then I learned that that doesn't work. So I got to get out of my isolation mode and get around people, you know,
What kind of people?
people like Will. Sorry, I had to. No, just good people.
That's-
Not like the old people I used to hang out with. Like there's still people like that around. He's a good guy. He's a good guy. Oh, well now, yeah, back in the day, I still see people like that and they're around me every day. And I see them, but I don't want what they have. I don't want to be mixed up in their stuff. I don't even want the bag in their pocket. I don't want none of it. I just want it all to stay away from me. So, like, I've noticed my circle's gotten smaller, less people, but it's more genuine.
Good.
So,
I'll hold the rest of my stuff till later.
you're gonna ask me more later? Gosh,
I save it up for you, Tommy.
thank you. Which one of you wills would like to take the mic? Oh, yeah.
This will,
Will.
on the list.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks,
Thank
Tommy.
you.
You're
welcome.
Come on down, we're ready for you.
Mine's Will, and I'm short. I'm a faithful follower of Christ. I'm also new at this, so I really don't have a clue. Tommy just did what I thought I was going to do. So, one thing is for sure, I'm completely powerless about what's going to happen here. But today I'm accepting of whatever's going to happen here.
That's good.
So, if someone wants to direct me on what they're after, I will do my best to try to do that. But
Would you like to read the first question?
yes. First, let me find it. A time to choose. When I continue to pursue my own agenda without asking God for direction, what happens in my life?
Isn't that a great question?
It is. And it's the only one I read beforehand because I thought we were sharing this, but whatever. Hey, look, what I will say is this. I work the steps of my life, so I'm not scared of this at all. When I continue to pursue my own agenda without asking God, I always make the wrong choice. Even after getting clean, no matter what it is in life, I'll buy the wrong car or I'll make the wrong breakfast and be sick all morning because the truth of the matter is I am nothing without God. See, in my addiction, what I learned was it was easy to buy people and to confuse people, manipulate people. And as an addict, I think a lot of us like to manipulate people. And we know how to do it. We're real good at it. I really feel that most of us, and I really think everybody in this room especially, has already started on the first step, whether you physically got into the step or not. It wasn't until I realized that I was completely powerless that I was accepting of looking for a change. Whether I found it or not was not the issue as much as I wanted to change. So I knew there was a problem. What happened in my life? Well, some of the things that happened in my life that was evident about God is when I accepted God and I did what I thought God wanted and I prayed and I did all the things that I put time in. I found this wonderful woman. We had a bunch of kids. And in this process, I lost God and allowed her to be my God. And the whole time I never realized it. And as much as I thought it was God's will to be with her, it was not God's will for me to make her my God. And in doing so, I lost focus on God and I was granted a divorce. And that allowed me to think for myself, and there was some serious pain there. And as a man, it's 5 foot, by the way, it's really hard for me to admit that I have emotions. So I turned to drugs. I turned to women. I turned to anything that I could do to keep focus off of me. So I'm going to move on to the next question because I don't want to cry because I'm a man. It's not really an issue today. I don't care if you see me cry. Because I do have emotions. This is the feelings.
Well, you did good. Thank you.
Now, if I can see it, it'd be great. Are there areas in my life in which God may have to use extreme measures before I will listen for direction? Which areas? Well, I touched on some of it, that divorce and whatnot, and I can mask it with a lot of things. But what I couldn't control was time. And in time, the drugs stopped working and the people around me started changing from people that I knew and cared about to people that only had one thing in common with me. And when I started getting sick or when I lost my place to live or I lost my job, it really was evident that I was on my own. For the first time in my life, I had to feel these feelings whether I wanted to or not. So when I start feeling feelings, I only know one way to fix it, and that was to use people, drugs, money, or try to do something that would make my ego feel better, because the last thing I wanted to do was turn back to God. I'd failed so bad. So I got a job. I started working really hard, and I became a workaholic, which I thought was better than being a drug addict, which, to be honest, I mean, in the world's eyes, it is. But the ultimate goal in life is what? If you haven't asked yourself that, maybe this would be a good time. Because I can look really good to everybody in this room, and it means nothing. Because when I get 6 people to carry me into the ground, the choices I've made here is going to affect that. Now, I'm not going to get into no preaching or anything of that nature, because it's not what we're here for. But what I will say is this. The extreme measures it took for me to find God and to find help was I had to lose everything, including my self-respect. When it got to the point where my mama couldn't help me, my daddy couldn't help me, and I didn't know anybody else that could do any better than I was doing, I had to find something different.
Good.
And I'd already been here before, so I knew what to do, but I had to find the willingness to do it. So I guess it follows on with this next question. What will it take for me to listen to God? Well, first, it takes me to get out of myself. Second, to answer a big question would be, is you got to take the time to listen.
Good.
A lot of people can pray. A lot of people can sit up here and say all these fancy words and sound really good. But when I get out of myself, I do things that I'm not comfortable with. I mentioned the divorce. My kids are grown today. They're old enough to make their own choices. A lot of them follow the way that I went down. One did not. One made me earn the right to be back in his life. And a few weeks ago, he was here with me. He got up in the middle of me. Excuse me.
You're good. You're all right.
He prayed for somebody. That don't bother me none. Okay. But after the end of the meeting, he looked at me and he said, Dad, hope it didn't upset nobody. And maybe for the first time I felt like that. Because I told him what he already knew. The boy's been teaching me for years. Don't know it. Doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. Who cares if they're upset? You follow God's direction, and if the rest of the world wants to convict you, That's a good thing. So I said after the meeting, and there's this other guy that shows up and whatnot, and I never want to say anything that's gonna try to make me look good or pat myself on the back. But I got it out myself, and I pulled him up. And a few of us got together, and we prayed for him. What I'm gonna say is this: when I first saw the guy, the last thing I thought I was gonna do is pray for him. I got a bad habit of trying to make assumptions on people and trying to put you in some kind of category because of the way you look, what you say, what you do. And when I remember just how powerless I was before I got here, man, how I was looking for an answer because I was somewhere I wasn't wanting to be. Maybe, just maybe, I should remember we're all created equal. Now, watch me look at TV. I haven't played. The truth of the matter is this: we can all have fun in this, and we can sit here and dwell in our self-pity and become dry drunks and sit here and wonder why people are sitting up here smiling. Why would somebody be willing to come up here or go out there and try to do things that everybody else looks at as why? If I want the same thing I've always gotten, I'm going to do the same things I've always done. If I want something different, I got to do something different.
Yeah.
Doug hit something very, very good a while ago. I am the person that I act like. Wow. I've heard that as a kid, but it never really clicked until you said that. How I think is going to determine how I act. And how I act is who I am. So, I've come way out of my own self-righteous thinking of myself, because when I got that job that I was referring to earlier, I started making real big money and I started getting a position of power, and people looked at me like I was somebody for the first time in my life because I'm 5 foot tall. At 5 foot tall, I never felt like I was going to be given a fair shake or whatever, however you want to put it. But I understand today that it's not what the rest of the world thinks of me. As a matter of fact, if you come in this room, which I don't know what I'm supposed to say, what I'm not supposed to say up here, but this is a Central Christian Center here in Joplin. I will be here. If you want to talk, I'm going to try to be here as much as I can. I said I'm going to be here, but really I don't want to commit to nothing that I may or may not do. Because the truth of the matter is if I'm really following God, I can tell you what I'm going to be doing next week. I tell you, I want to be here. And if at all possible, I will be here. And it's not about me no more, it's about us. And that's why in the step it says we admitted we were powerless, not I admitted I was powerless.
Yes.
It's easy for me to sit back in my isolation, like Tommy was talking about, feeling self-pity for myself because I'm trying to fix me, which got me in my problem, not the solution. But when I humbled myself enough to admit that maybe somebody else has got a better answer than I do, I was able to grow a little bit. I may never reach my destination of where I want to be on this earth. That's because it grows every day, because I grow every day. I've already well exceeded where I thought I was going to be in this recovery process. Because when I first got here, I would have never guessed I would have had a week, let alone what I got now. And a lot of people come up here and they tell you what their playing time is, and I feel somewhat of a showboat sometimes, but truthfully, that's the only way you're going to know that this works. I got 14 months, okay? I'm working 15. I've been at this for many years, and I hope that I can keep focused and stay humble enough to where I can have another day tomorrow. Thank you for letting me share.
It's good, Rob. Thank you. You got out of there before I could ask questions.
Hey, I learned. Mistakes too.
I can't find nowhere.
Do I?
Yeah.
That's gonna be good. Just right away. I'm trying. Pull up the mic. We wanna hear you.
Yeah.
You got good stuff there.
You did a good job there. Makes it harder on me here.
You could have went first.
I should have, because then I would have just said a couple words, got off here, and let him do it all. Time to choose. I'm just gonna go with how the questions affected me,
Good.
you know? When, hold on 1 second, people. When I continue to pursue my own agenda without asking God for directions, what happens in my life? Man, it just falls apart totally. No ifs, ands about it. First of last year, I was hit hard with the situation, and I really don't want to go into the situation, but it was enough. It affected my boy, and it was enough to take me down. And I don't let a lot get to me, but it brought me to where I had no other alternative, which is what really put me into working these steps harder than what I was doing. So to go into question 2, the areas of my life where extreme measures, man, he had to affect my child. He had to put me in a situation where I couldn't help my own child. I just had to wait and see. And that is hard to do if you're in one of them situations. And same scenario for number 3, that's just what it took. It had to have something to open my eyes. It had to hit me deep. And when you raise your kids by yourself, since he was 2 months old, he's 17 now, and you spend a year without him because of nothing that he really done, but his just situation he was caught in. And there's nothing that he's looking for you for answers, and you can't give them to him. And you got to turn to another way. So the choice, I mean, there really shouldn't be really any choice. You just need to do it if you want to. If you want to move on, you just got to do it. You really shouldn't have to choose. But they give you a choice. It's either the right one or the wrong one. Decision's up to you. Hope the best. I'm done.
Thank you, Will.
Thank you.
You guys made it easy on me.
Hard to follow that.
I appreciate your honesty. You know, that touches people. Both of you, you know, being authentic, being real, and the things that Tommy was there. Now, I pushed on Tommy a little bit because I've been pushing on him a little longer than anybody else. Okay, so I was do I?
That's okay.
And he's invited me to. Can you believe that? So anyway, Courtney, so don't worry, I'll be gentle next week, okay? And so, have you decided what you want?
The persistent seeking.
The first profile,
Yeah,
and it is what?
persistent seeking. It's in Job.
Okay. All right. So you guys know where it's at, and And, you can read it in your step book and get synchronized. And so, all right. So any comments about what we've gone over so far? Anything that you'd like to say? What do you think, Matthew? Oh my God, he's gonna ask me a question, right? But, these three questions are some pretty powerful questions. Do you agree?
Yes.
And so, when I continue to pursue my own agenda without asking God for direction, do I even need to ask? Has anybody ever done that? Is there anybody here that has never, you haven't done that multiple times? And so, and that's really what a relationship is about. And that's coming to a connection with God is about having a relationship with Him. There's a lot of misinformation, in my opinion, about this, about rules and regulations and performance. And if you, hopefully that you don't hear that here, because it's about connection. It's about relationship, because relationship makes us better. That statement here is we, like you mentioned a while ago, we, that's relationship. You cannot recover alone, because we've all tried it. And how did that work out for us? Hello? I can't hear you.
How did it work for you? I'm here.
It didn't. It requires that, because when it's just you, you are caught in the trap that you've set for yourself, your own thoughts. You need to have, in my opinion, you need to have that connection, that relationship with God, but also you need to have, the cross goes like this. This is with God. This is with others. And we're to have relationship with Him, but we're also to have relationship with others. Now, the thing of it is, you may not be able to have all the relationship that you like to have with others, because, they have responsibility in that dynamic. Okay, you can't play both sides of the table. You're on your side. Okay, so when this question number one, when I continue to pursue my own agenda, what's happened? Well, we all know. I got another question that ties in with that. How about that? Are you ready for that question? What will happen if you just have a change of mind and you make a different choice and you decide to run your own agenda again? What?
Be worse. Worse.
What do you mean by that?
You've already changed your life a little bit, and then you go back. It's not gonna do what you thought.
Do you understand why? Why it actually will seem worse or feel worse or be worse?
Know better.
Because you know better?
Yeah.
And because previously you were able to hide behind the delusion of self-deception and convince yourself that you didn't really know, but you really did, and you knew you did. But now, after you know even more, it's harder, not impossible, but it's harder to lie to yourself. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
And when you lie to yourself, we are poisoning our own soul. And we don't want that for others, particularly the folks that we love. And we'd prefer not to have it for ourselves, but we find ourselves caught in these traps. And then when we get overwhelmed, that's the reason why we've talked so much about relapse protection, learning the signs, recognizing signs, and taking steps to deal with those signs. Because if you get overwhelmed, it's going to drown you. And then when you're drowning, you do whatever it takes to try to survive, right? Whether it's get high or whatever. Isn't that the truth? So we have to be very careful about falling into those places of getting triggered, relapsing because of those triggers, getting overwhelmed, and then acting out, which would be relapsing, because there's our amygdala, and what we trained our survival mechanism to do is to go this particular path. And you'll go that path and not even think about it. Isn't that the truth? Hello? Yeah. So what we have to do, or should I ask the question, what do you think we ought to do? Want me to answer that question? What?
We need to practice.
Practice.
That's what we're doing.
But before you practice, what do you need to do?
Keep your guard up.
Keep your guard up but to be able to keep your guard up, what do you gotta do?
Well, here's my thing, okay?
You're not gonna answer that question, are you?
I am gonna answer it. There's a long way around. I realize that my addiction talks to me in my own voice.
That's
So I
right.
have to absolutely can think about what I'm thinking about. And
Right.
confer what's my thoughts and what's God's thoughts. And that will keep me safe to a point, because if I can think about what I need to do, which is practice what I know instead of going on my own agenda and, thinking for myself again, then, because it comes in slow. Nobody ever gets any kind of clean time. I've seen people with 20 years go back out. And what it is, they don't recognize their own voice telling them, and they just go with it, thinking that that's them, when really, we know better. But the truth of the matter is we stop practicing what we got to do to build that relationship with God, where we
Right.
hear God
Right.
more than we hear ourselves.
And the way that I would say it and what I was pushing for is you have to create a plan. And that does require thinking about it. And then acting on that plan and following through, and which means acting means practicing. I'm talking to you.
Yes.
And we have to practice it. And I want to add this while you were talking. How many times have I, throughout these 18 years, that I've heard people say, I remember this one guy, he said, I have 10 years clean and I'm never going to relapse. I don't believe in relapse. And I said, you scare me. Because see, I understand you prefer not to relapse, but that's not what you said. You have an absolute. And the fact of it is, when you get overwhelmed, and he did all the things that he said he'd never do. You know what I mean? And that's because he convinced himself that he didn't have to prepare for the possibilities of things going against him, which is some of what you just said right there. I read many years ago about how they, and you boxed some, didn't you, Will? You boxed?
A little.
And I understand that one of the first things that they train a boxer is to get up. If you get knocked down, you got to get up. That makes sense, right? Because what's the odds of a boxer getting knocked down? Pretty good, okay? But if you don't think you have to worry about that because I'm never going to get knocked down, then you never create a plan how to get back up. And what happens is you get knocked down and then you automatically go to trying to figure out, how did I get here? What did I do wrong? Did somebody slip up on me that I wasn't aware of? It can't be my fault. It's got to be their fault. But what's going on? And by the time you figure out what may be going on, you're already counted out. Does that make sense? So what I understand that they train is that don't think about it. Just get back up. Just get up. Just get up and get back into the game. Right? Just do it. I remember when I was a teenager, I was watching Wild World of Sports, and I don't think that's even available nowadays, but ABC, if I remember correctly. And I was watching a guy in boxing, and a guy hit him, and he was bouncing around, and the guy hit him and knocked him down, knocked him out, and he hit the mat, and he immediately jumped back up and went back to bouncing around because he had practiced, even if I get knocked down, to get back up. Because if you get back up, you have a better odds of staying in the game, right? If you relapse, get back in there. Don't say, well, I might as well run this all the way out and enjoy it while I'm here, right? Let's make it a big one. Let's make this last. I've already messed it up, so why worry? Yeah. And that's where a lot of people die, right there. And so, anyway, this guy, as soon as he was up bouncing around, then you saw that he was there bouncing around. He got back up, and then he fell over. Then he was totally offline then. But the point of the story is we got to get back in. I don't know how many times, how many different individuals that I've worked with throughout the years, they come to me and in various different terms they told me they used. They may have said it in different ways, but that's what they said. And then they look at me and they want a statement from me. They want what I'm thinking. And my statement has always been, well, what did you learn? Because if you don't learn,
that a few times.
what do you learn? What did you learn? Because see, if we're there in a situation, there's a reason why, and so there's something there to learn. Would you agree with that? Would you agree with that? Something to learn? Something to learn. And if we can learn it, if we can grasp that, what you were talking about earlier, Will, if we can grasp that, when you have a new thought, a new understanding, you have a different experience, that changes your entire brain. That changes how you think. That changes your belief systems. Because then you will have different beliefs, you'll have different thoughts, you'll have different emotions, you'll have different actions, you'll have different outcomes, and you'll have different beliefs. And you keep running that cycle over and over. So, if I stay on this, I'm not going to get to talk about what I want to talk about, put this together. We're talking about these choices tonight, and I wanted to read John Maxwell's quote here. He says, life is a matter of choice. Anybody here familiar with John Maxwell? He is he's known worldwide as a leader of teaching people leadership, business. But he was a pastor for 30 or 40 years before he went into that. So He says, life is a matter of choice, and every choice you make makes you. Yes. Viktor Frankl, which is one of my favorite guys, wrote the book, Man's Search for Meaning. He said this, life is a matter of choice. He goes on to say this, he says, between stimulus and response, there is a space. You were talking about making that choice a while ago. There is a space between stimulus, the triggers or whatever. You know, this is what I feel like I got to do. I'm faced with that urge, right? So therefore I got to act on the urge, but there's a space there for a decision before you respond. He says there's a space between stimulus and response in that space. And in that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. God protects our right. God protects our right to choose. God has given us a free will. You know, Adam and Eve had a free will, right? But then we have to live with our consequences of our choices. So, all the more reason why we should make healthy choices. Courtney, you okay? All right. Choices. We all got to make choices. So what we have to do is, as Saul of Tarsus made a choice. He wanted to do what he thought was right, but he was having a rather an ego trip, and then his situation almost lined up like that question number one that we had here. I think it was number one, was that we had a situation. I think that's known as number two. There, sometimes we put ourselves in a place that we really, it's a difficult spot, and we get in such a spot, in a corner, that we finally go ahead and yield and listen. And what happened to Saul was that he was knocked to the ground, and he realized he needed to yield. And we've all had some of those experiences, and maybe more than one. Would you agree with that? So we have, there's some research by Professor Sheena Langer, and she discussed the phenomenon in her book, The Art of Choosing, okay? And she had some research that she observed where they had grocery stores that had two different stations, okay? And one station had 24 samples of jam and things like that. The other station only had 6 options, okay? And the results of this study revealed that the one that had only 6 choices had 30% more customers' reaction or buys. The one that had 24 had a lot of inquiry, okay, but they only had 3% that actually went on and bought. What does this mean? Her conclusion is that sometimes having too many choices causes us to go into a state of confusion. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And so, and that's what a lot of the internet is today, because it gives us so many choices that it paralyzes people to keep from making a choice. But the truth of it is, a non-choice it's still a choice, right? And so some of her research concluded that we ought to really be smart about this. And sometimes when you're dealing with folks, you want to give them a choice. But at the same time, if you give them too many choices, you paralyze them. What do you think about that? Deuteronomy 30:19 says this, that this day I will call on heaven and earth to witness against you, that I have set before you life and death, blessing and cursing. Now choose life, so that you and your children may live. Something about this scripture, I thought this ties into this research. God gives us choice, but he goes ahead and lays it down to two choices, right? You either choose life or you choose death. Okay? And that means, that helps us to understand that you pick one or the other, right? And the rest of the story is, it doesn't only affect you, it affects everybody in your life, your family. Now that's not a threat, it's a statement of fact, right? We've seen some of that. So we all have choices. The question is, what do you choose? Where is it you want to go? Here you go. Here's another question. One of my favorite. What is it you really want? What is it that you really, really want? Because the fact of it is, those thoughts, those choices or non-choices, dictate our destiny in life. What do you think about that?
Do I have to choose?
Do what?
Do I have to choose?
I think you know the answer to that. It's a choice, one way or the other. Whether it's being proactive and making a choice, or being reactive, where a lot of us have been most of our lives, or by a non-choice, which is a choice. Okay, we're going to wind it up here. Any comments before we shut down? Anybody get anything out of tonight? Tommy, thanks. Willie, thanks. Will, thanks. Appreciate. And Courtney's going to be heading us up next week. All right. So may the Lord bless you and keep you, and may his face shine upon you and give you his peace. And again, here we go. Make healthy choices. They're far better than unhealthy choices. Right?
Yes.
So we'll see you next week.